Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Challenge 40 Battle of the Eras RHAP podcast for Era 3. I am Brian Cohen. With me, as always, is my co-host, Ali Lasher. Ali, how are you?
Rocking and rolling through the preview. I'm good. How are you?
Doing good. Excited to talk about Era 3, get into these folks, getting closer to the premiere date. I listened to your podcast with Mike Bloom today, so I feel like I'm getting extra Ali podcasting time, and it's been fun.
You're so behind. That dropped so long ago. That's weird that you just listened to it now.
But here we are. Ready to go.
I have some old business. So
Please,
we talked
I love old business.
2 podcasts ago on the Era 1 OG team podcast. We talked about Mark Long and like that business. And actually through my research for Era 3, I found an article that was like an interview with an executive producer of All Stars. And I'm going through because I pulled the link at Julie Pizzi, who worked on the challenge and has worked on the challenge since 2000. So shout out to Variety for this. But there was an interesting bit of news about how they jive, like they square Mark Long as a producer with Mark Long, the competitor of the season. So here's a quote. Well, Mark Long is one of our EPs on this. And again, this is about All Stars 3. When the season is airing, a lot of people will reach out to him on social media and say, quote, I would totally do this. Mark lets us know if people are interested. We never tell him who we're casting because he's so close to the cast. But also, we knew we were bringing Mark on board for this one, so we had to really keep that division. We were so excited to get Roni, and this was a question about getting Roni back. Anyway, so I was like, oh, that's kind of like a little bit of insight into Mark's possible role, which is like he's the bridge to the cast and like gathers interest, and they don't tell him who's going to be on it. So I'm fine with Mark being involved.
Yeah, I'm sure it's still a little fuzzy and it's probably not super kosher, but look, I don't think people are going to be complaining about Mark popping up on these seasons. So it's all good.
People already have. People have. Well, that's why we adjusted.
They can kick rocks. They can kick rocks. They can go.
But yeah, I am excited to get into Era 3. One thing, Brian, if you could bring up the slide that you and I have to address, because you ghosted my text about it, so I will discuss it on camera. That's perfect. By the way, the quick moment of Brian, when Brian accidentally shares his screen big, that would be my goal. Anyway, so as we like sort of talked about in Era 1, you have been itching to use this image for months.
Literally.
And then you still haven't at this hour on July 23rd, use this image. And then people are messaging me like, great image.
Like, well, it's also not my image.
Not my image.
Tricky did it.
I've given Tricky credit every time Ali, have used the image. Why haven't you posted
I'll post it up. I mean, it's already out there. It's, people can have fun with it.
We were waiting to... It's like nothing funnier to me than I wake up to tweets of like Brian posting the first Era preview has dropped, and he didn't post the image that he's texted me 6 times to be like, "Can I do it now?"
Yeah, I'll post it for the premiere. Big day.
Okay. Well, so much for synergy, but yeah, thank you to Tricky for making this. And again, for any doubt, this is Brian's idea, but then he didn't use it. I actually did go through my screenshots or our texts, and I did find like 4 separate occasions where you considered just using it with like a Taylor Swift quote. And I was like, oh, well, like we're going to do a preview though. But whatever. Like I was like, it's your image.
That's right. I was debating which one to use. I don't remember what I came up with, but I was going to do some more Googling. I'm going to do some more research about or someone wants to tweet me like the best challengey Taylor Swift quote to go with this. Lay it on me.
I think it's look at our podcast at Brian, you care more about, getting like likes to go nowhere because you're not going to be an influencer. I mean, maybe you could be, but you're just gathering likes for the joy.
I like the dopamine rush. I'm like that person.
Point them
like
to the
Netflix.
podcast though. Make it work for you.
Hey, I did. I put that underneath the. What do I put my Venmo? I take that back. I was gonna say I linked to the podcast.
Did anyone Venmo you?
No, not with my Super Bowl tweet went viral. But I thought, yeah, maybe I did both. Though I think I just did my Venmo. But that's
I think I heckled you and then you added it or something like that.
yeah.
Is probably how it happened. But no, I think you proposed, because I did go through the text. You proposed I need to calm down or something like that.
Yes, that was it.
But
That was
all
it.
right, so we're still waiting for Brian to get into the image that he was excited about.
It could become a fun bit through the season. I just never posted it, and we're just still waiting. And then I posted before season 41.
I also went public for a few minutes because
I know
you didn't post it, so
it was jarring.
I didn't want to waste it. So the 30 people that were sitting in my pendings have gotten an upgrade for the season. All right, let's talk about Era 3.
Mm-hmm.
I have to just comment about the cast photo for a second, and I put this in the Facebook thread for this era. But I don't know that I've ever seen a cast photo from any television show with less team chemistry. Like, we literally see Survivor tribes where they just met and they are closer together than the smattering of veterans in this photo.
It seems like there was supposed to be someone between Tori and Corey who got photoshopped out of it, and they just didn't know what to do with the space because there's a gigantic gap there, and no one's touching. Everyone looks miserable. I know you're supposed to be like, "Ooh, this is my tough guy face." People just look super angry.
Look at Leroy. Leroy's Where's Waldo. They just dropped him in just a neutral pose. They were like, we're gonna do a test shot, so don't worry about this. And then they accidentally used the test shot.
Yeah, it's crazy how Tori and Devin couldn't be further away from each other when they're the two that would theoretically be the closest people with each other, but they're couldn't be further away.
I mean, I can't explain who's next to who because Jordan and Nia's between Jordan and Tori. These people look less familiar than if they hadn't met each other. So I don't know if that speaks to the amount of dramatic connections on this era, which are a lot, or if it's just totally random. But there was a chill down my spine when I saw this photo, especially compared to the other eras, which you look at era 1 and they're holding up Tina, all a bar mitzvah photo. And here it's I'd rather not be in this photo.
Yeah, because it is interesting. And this is the first era where, outside of a Fresh Meat or something like that, where we start to dabble in other shows. And it kind of does represent that. We have Are You the One represented here. Obviously, a couple of the Real Worlds up represented here. So it's, we're our first dabbling into the outside space within MTV.
No, and you're mentioning Real World, but I think also what's special about it that makes it sort of more akin to this misfit other show vibe is they were besides Leroy, they were kind of weird seasons of the Real World. It was a weird era where they were trying more gimmicks, and we'll talk about those people as they come up. But it was not just standard issue Real World. It was, what are we going to do to keep this going? Real World gimmicks. So even in a sense, those seasons of the Real World were also kind of Are You the One type, different shows.
Yeah, no, 100%. 100%. It's a fun group though. So I'm excited. Let's get into it.
Well, one thing I want to say that melted my brain as just another general point, the fact that Averey, Leroy, and Jonna are the same era as Tori and Devin and some of the others, and Amanda, just completely melted my brain. Again, to level set for the audience, we're talking about seasons 21 to 30 of people who originated on those seasons of the challenge. And I think this group represents it well. It's a definitive group of people. I think, spoiler alert, almost everybody really, really belongs here and exemplifies that era of the challenge. But it's a weird group of seasons.
Yeah, the gap from season 21 to 30 never feels bigger, like a 10-season gap that it does here. Because Leroy and Jonna both debut in 21, and I think does Tori debut in 30? So that's a full, or maybe she did in 29, but it's a full 10-season gap.
No, 30, you're right.
Okay, then it's the full run of this era that really kind of spans the test of time. And there's a lot of these people that, as much as they're in the same era, have never done seasons together, really, which is kind of a fun twist amongst this crew.
All right, well, let's start with some of the old guard you mentioned. Let's start with Leroy. Let's start with the Waldo on the screen. It doesn't, like, again, totally photoshopped into this photo. Making it his 13th season of the challenge proper. I'm just counting because it might be 12.
Are we counting them all?
No, it's his 13th season.
Okay.
There's something I want to ask, actually, Mike Bloom, but we'll get to that later, of what the press is counting as seasons. But yeah, as far as I know, it's his 13th season. Don't at me. I don't care. And, where does this stand? Like, there's a lot to say about Leroy. We've probably said it already on All Stars 4. But my, pressing question is, how does this figure in to Leroy's retirement? For new viewers, he retired after Double Agents, came back for All Stars, which was like an asterisk. It's different. And now here he is on 40.
What do you mean? How does it figure into his retirement? I mean, he's very much unretired.
Well, okay. That's my,
is that the question?
That's one question. Well, there's two parts of it. One question is, does this mean he's unretired, or is this like the exception I wish Wes had made of well, it's 40. That's kind of like a special exception, but I'm done after this. Call me at 50.
Yeah. I think when you retire, I think if you go back, you're unretired. I mean, unless you come back as a consultant for your former company, and you can still collect the Social Security and things like that. But I think you're at this point you're unretired. Once you clock back in, you're back. It's not like a weird special. This is very much a full challenge proper season. More so than almost any other, obviously. So he's in. He's unretired.
Okay, so less definition based and technical, and more just, do you think this means we will see him, if asked, on 41, 42, whatever? Because I don't think it's fair to say this isn't a special season, this is just a regular season. Who knows what the challenge was willing to shell out in terms of appearance fees to get some names for 40, or just how people view it. Do I think it works both ways? Do I think Katie Doyle is going, and I know I said this in the first era, so I hate to hammer on her. Do I think she's going to continue to be invited back? No, I don't think she goes to the top of the challenge proper list because she's on challenge 40. In the same way that I could see myself being I'll come for 40 because what a celebration of something that was 13 years or 13 seasons of my life. But I'm not going to keep coming back. This is kind of a special thing.
I would have that thought about Leroy if he didn't come back for All Stars 4. If he was retired and never came back and was all right, for 40, twist my arm, I'm going to come back. The fact that he did it for such a random season, I know All Stars is an easier commitment than a challenge proper season, but he still cashed the check. He still went for the win. He was still in the mix. So there's no reason for me to think he's not going to be on an All Stars 5 and All Stars 6 or a season 41 or a season 42. I feel like he's very much in the pool.
Yeah, and I would love that. I was upset that Leroy even retired, but I think there is a different calculus there too, where we hear a lot from players, whatever, that All-Stars being a shorter commitment is easier for parents. It's less of it. So yeah, there's a reason why he would come back for 5 and 6 of All-Stars and not another season of challenge proper. But in any event, 13 seasons, number 13, unlucky for some, hopefully not for Leroy. In the same way that I felt like I'd be excited for a Leroy win of All-Stars, it just didn't feel the same as when we had champagne on ice for his last season of Double Agents, hoping he would win. He did not. The win has still eluded Leroy. And wow, wouldn't it be an incredible ending to season 40 if Leroy can pull the win out here and then retire?
that would be an all-timer. That would be an all-timer. But I think Leroy, he really represents, he kind of did, the fact that he also debuted in season 21, where they really started on this trajectory of doing paired seasons and things like that. So he really, to me, represents the shift in how hard it has become to win this show. If Leroy debuted season 4, he probably has 2 wins because of just how the nature of the game used to go with how, we saw it at the graphic from era 1. Literally, I think almost every single person that premiered in era 1 has won a season before. But if you drop them into premiering in the mid-20s, where there's at most 4 people winning, sometimes as little as 1 person winning, it's very, very hard nowadays to get a win. So Leroy, to me, more so than anyone, exemplifies that. Of if he had premiered or debuted earlier in the show's run, he probably wins a Ruins or something like that, where it's 4 or 5 people that all win together. Because he almost won the team, the one that he was on, a team one on with War of the Worlds. He almost was a part of that winning team. So that goes to show how difficult it is to win this show nowadays.
Yeah, and one thing that was interesting just looking at his, past history of the show is that unlike like a Darrell where it's like we're debating if his, 4 of his wins all were in his like first 4 seasons or whatever. The bulk of Leroy's final making appearances were in the more recent seasons he's been on. So,
Mhm.
including All Stars, you mentioned War of the Worlds 2, Double Agents, Vendettas. He's showing up in the finals of 4 of his last like 6-7 seasons. So that's
Right.
pretty impressive for somebody who he's 39, like he's on the older side of this sort of second half of the era, more recent eras 3 and 4. So I'm back in on Leroy. Like looking at his stats, like made me more excited. Like I
Yep.
feel like it's been the engine who couldn't or the engine who could, whatever it is. But I'm all in again on Leroy.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about Leroy is he's obviously very well liked, and obviously his physical prowess is very good for elimination. So while he hasn't won the show, unless he gets hurt or has like a partner that gets
Oh,
hurt,
how could you even say that?
he usually makes a
Ay,
very
ay,
deep run.
ay.
Like I'm sure across his 13 seasons, I don't know if there's been any where he's just been straight up eliminated in like the first 4 or 5 eliminations, like on his merit, not because he got hurt or like, with a partner thing. So you could probably pencil Leroy in. Here's comes the kiss of death for like episode 13 or 14 of this show. That's just the way it goes for him.
Ay, ay, ay. All right, cancel Brian. Who asked you to say that? I mean, it's also funny because, like, one thing to say, and like you're like blaming his partners. Leroy has flopped some of the most luckiest like replacement partners that he could have just been sent home. Like
Mhm.
he's flopped like some luck that
He's
he
had
should have
both.
been eliminated on his own seasons. He's had
Yeah.
both, but like more. I just like can't believe how they used to replace people. But in any
Well,
event,
yeah, I mean the Teresa for Nia
yeah.
replacement, if that was bananas, like the conspiracy theories would have been out the wazoo of like, oh my god, they gave him a partner. This is insane. Like that was an all timer. I mean the Mike thing was kind of just worked out because of like it's honestly one of the more historic like underdog runs in challenge history that them
Yeah,
making the
but
final.
worked
But
out. To say that it worked out, he got his best friend in as a replacement for a rival on a rival
sure,
season. We
sure,
love
but
team chemistry, and
yeah,
maybe that's a problem. Eras 3 has no team chemistry.
yes, that is very true. That's what it looks like. That's what it looks like.
All right, well, let's take it to the other more classic real worlder on the docket. One of your faves and a fan fave, Jonna, 35 now from Real World Cancun, season 22. Also, as you said, appeared on Rivals with, I was going to say an actual rival, one of her current besties.
Hmm.
Um, and, Jonna's had such an interesting road because her challenge history is on the challenge proper is like not incredible, both because she's had rough exes experiences and also not amazing athletic performances. And then has definitively the most dominant All Stars record of the
Hmm.
franchise.
Yeah, her challenge career is very much the meme of the horse with like the chicken scratch in the beginning and then like the beautiful horse's face at the end, because that's like been her transformation. I think of anyone outside of maybe like an OG person that people might be most super excited for, I am most excited to see Jonna on this stage with this group of people and see how she does. I think the fact that she was the top female 3 straight seasons, winning 2 of them on All Stars. Now it doesn't get much harder than this female crop here on 40. So it's going to be very, very fun to see how she navigates this pool. She had a little bit of a rough time with World Championships, but again, that was like a very odd makeup of a season. Little knock against her there, but I'm very, very curious to see how her All Stars connections and how her gameplay can evolve here, because it's going to be quite the uphill battle for her going against like especially like the Era 2 and Era 1 women.
So Jordan Grant has a pitch for Jonna being the most connected person on this whole season. So
Love it.
let's check that out. The era that raised me, just as a general note, those of us who started in the early 20s get, quote, it. The right combination of backstory, drama, and gameplay. I think the best item of note is how insanely connected Jonna is. Derek is her number 1 from before the real world, and this is Derek C, I believe. She has
Yes.
She has All Stars connections from eras 1 and 2, has been at Challenge Mania events with Era 4, and then was on World Champs with everyone else. Basically, bananas levels connections without the threat.
I think that's all very fair. And I think almost more than that is, as yes, it's going to be very tough for her to go like be competing against some of the strong women. As a 2-time champ, she's not going to be thought of as like the mega threat coming into this season. She's just not. Now with Cara and Laurel and Rachel and Emily, like there's so many people, and Jenny West, like there's so many people that just like that by their stature are going to be more intimidating that you might again forget about Jonna. And yeah, that's a great point about her connections. Like the All Stars crew, she's got a lot of great ins with Era One. Even if she might not have as many ins with her own era. Like I think that's going to be like the more interesting factor of like how the voting is decided. If it is era centric, she might find herself on the outs with some of that with some of that voting block. But if it's more decided by some of the other eras, she has some ins there.
Yeah, and for some of the reason you're saying you're most excited to see Jonna back, like I agree. I think I was gonna say it's like I don't think anybody else has such a delta between their performances on the challenge proper and their performances on All Stars. And part of that is just how much time passed between Jonna's last appearance. Do I have it? To 2015 and then All Stars 1. So it does beg the question, and not really about Jonna, but just in general. And I meant to ask you on some of the other previews, but I didn't. But here we are. Thank God we have 1,000 of them. What do you think the athletic difficulty or challenge difficulty will be? You know, will it be closer to an All Stars or will it be closer to a proper?
It's, to me, that's the most important question of like how this show is going to go down. I think ideally I would love them to do not even just like extreme physical, but just like the best of the best competitions that they can come up with like from different eras. But I feel like the forgotten part of 39 was they started to really like not dumb down, but like quiet down or lesser the physical eliminations. Like it wasn't nearly as physical as it's been, and obviously All Stars is not nearly as physical. So I would lean it's going to be more All Stars level physicality, and not like it's going to be all hall brawl and like pole wrestle and all these like mega athletic things every single week. I just don't think that's going to be the case. I think it's going to skew more towards the gimmicky stuff because that's just the way the show has been going.
That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, if they took what did they take us through? Like chaos control and like I don't know, crunch. Yeah, whatever. So I don't know why, like, you know, you said on one of the eras we talked about of like, it'd be great if they brought some of the like old challenges back. Like, I'd love to go through phases. Let's do eras 1 and people's names are in a coconut and it's kind of like beach games. And then eras 2, whatever. And eras 3, you're risking a concussion. And era 4, you know, who knows? So like, I would like to see like some variety. I think the cast suggests like, I don't think we have a lot of physical liabilities or any more physical liabilities than we do on like a normal season of Challenge Proper when it has been super physical. So I think that kind of casting is notable as compared to All Stars where it's still quite physical, but maybe there's more of a wide age range or some normal people who aren't 50-year-old Mark Longs who look like they're, you know, 25 in the body. So I think like the fact that they've picked all people who could probably participate at the Challenge Proper level, maybe hopefully points to like they expect to run this at the Challenge Proper level. But I think flagging 39 is a really good point. And now I'm less excited. All right. So we'll see what happens with Jonna. All right, let's go to the person next to Jonna in the photo for no reason. Let's go to teen dad Corey Wharton coming off the celebrity life of the MTV celebrities to join us back on the challenge.
Yeah, the last of the true young bucks to try to make a win that gets home some money. Excited to see Corey back. We saw him World Championships, right? That's what he was on.
USA
like
2.
USA 2. That variety pack. Fun to see him there. Weird spot for him there because that's not really like his, you know, he's not like that mega type person of that like stature, but it's fun to see him in this mix as someone who, similar to Leroy, has had some bad luck, can't get over the hump, can't get the win, has been a little bit away from the challenge world. So I don't know where his like deep connections stand. So I think that's going to be a very fun to see how he kind of reintegrates back in. But Corey's an interesting one because he's very athletic, but things go wrong for him. So I don't. He's an interesting catch.
Yeah, so this is his 10th season of Challenge Proper, so kind of an anniversary of sorts for Corey. Yeah, we last saw him on Spies, Lies, and Allies. I think the fact that so that's he's missed Ride or Dies and obviously Battle for the New Championship. But I think even since he's got 3 kids now, with 2 Challenge alums, right? Taylor was on the at least an Are the One alum. I think she was on a season of the Challenge. She's not on my list, so I don't have to know her. But I think Corey kind of comes back different, right? Like we see him obviously locked in with Nelly T and sort of the evolution of their game together. I think when we see him more recently, it feels like he's good for a confessional. He's good for a laugh for me, but he doesn't really do much. He's just kind of like dad vibes there. So it'll be interesting to see, especially if this is sort of a team dynamic where he's coming out as opposed to more recently like individual or paired games. One thing I just have to highlight that is just like such a fun look back, but one thing, and we'll go to Tony next, because both of them, their first season was Bloodlines, which I just want to flag, what a weird first season of the challenge to jump in on, to be Bloodlines. Just your first season with the most random, probably like the 2 of the most random relatives, Tony's brother and Mitch of Mitch Watch fame.
Yeah. Mitch is the Corey cousin, right? Not brother, he's cousin.
Cousin.
He's cuz.
But Corey's Real World Explosion season was one of the Real World seasons I was talking about, where it's just like a huge gimmick and exes kind of like ding dong into the house. But that also brought Ashley Millionaire Mitchell, and they were rivals together on Corey's second appearance in Rivals 3. And I just, this has nothing to do with this preview, but I have to just read this because for people who did not watch this season of Real World, this was one of the best just like summaries of a moment that lives rent free in my head, which is basically like how they used to treat people who needed to be eliminated from the house. So here's a summary from Wikipedia. The pair met as roommates during the original season of Real World Explosion. They got along until Ashley got drunk and disrespected Corey by telling him she could buy his family. After that night, they continued to be on bad terms. You don't say. After Ashley faced disagreements with many housemates, she left the residence and said she would only return if the other roommates wanted her there. Now, that's not how I remember it. I thought like it was a mandatory by production house vote, but maybe it was Ashley. So they voted. They voted if she could come back or not. And Corey was one of the 4 housemates to vote Ashley out, leading to her, quote, voluntary departure.
And then she became AI and like introduced some twists onto the house.
What an insane moment of history in television that was. So,
I think she was kicked out of the house, like not kicked, like she was like forced to spend the night out because didn't she threaten to throw a boiling pan of oil at them? I think that's what more preempted you got to spend the night elsewhere, Ashley.
There were a lot of things that happened, but I do remember the I Can Buy Your Family, and I do remember the house vote, and I do remember thinking this woman needs to be removed from the house. Like, why are they making the house vote? So they came to a good voting decision. There's a plug for voting. So good job on them.
It's not that I forgot the I Could Buy Your Family, but I kind of forgot that is from the same person, Millionaire Mitchell. Like she's also now a millionaire, so she could like buy the family herself, I guess, but also her family's. I kind of forgot that Ashley, I guess, comes from money.
No one's talking about that. I don't know that that's true. I think it was just.
I don't know if it's true either because it's never come up again since.
Yeah, people. I mean, here we are uncovering the news. But just when you go back and look, not that we're not going to remember that fondly, but that is sort of the joy of going back and looking at these people and like people you haven't seen in a while, or, you know, thinking about what Real World season or what was their first season of the challenge kind of brings back in sometimes amazing and sometimes crazy memories. But speaking of crazy memories, let's go to Tony Raines.
Wait. Yeah, Tony. So Tony, we got back All Stars 4 for a very brief cup of coffee before he had some personal things back home, had to take himself out of the game. And then we get him back full force. Tony Time is here. Very excited for Tony Time. I didn't think we would see Tony Time again. I thought after his last appearance, you know, he has kids, family, as he would say, diapers are expensive. Maybe the kids are now out of diapers, so he can, you know, come back. Diapers aren't.
Once you're unretired, you're unretired.
It's true. He retired. He retired from needing diapers, and that opened him up to unretire from the challenge. So he's got that going for him. And here we are, Tony time.
Yeah, another one starting on Bloodlines, which is insane. Also, Railroad Skeletons, which was an insane concept, but it did bring Tony back in touch with his now wife. So against all odds, incredible. Yes, Tony got married in between All Stars 4, where he talked about wanting to get married, and the 3 years that passed until we got to see the season. One weird fact about Tony, and I hope we don't Leroy him as, talking about this, but Tony has like left on DQs or family emergencies like almost half the seasons that he's been on, which is a bummer. Like, hopefully Tony sticks around here, and if he leaves of his own volition.
Yeah, he had one of the more gross exits when his entire body turned green when he fell in the water and like ruptured his spleen or something, or maybe he just totally turned white. But there was a weird color he turned when he had to go home.
Brian always on the color report. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I think Tony's kind of joining Corey and sort of like through a foreign messy boy who's turned dad and like loyal partner. And it's interesting that they're on the same team. I don't know.
And Leroy too. 3 dads.
Yeah, but Leroy was always a good guy.
Sure. But this could be the dad group.
Team dad. No one submitted it, but we'll see.
Man, there's a mother. There's parents. There's a lot of parents in this. I think Jonna has kids too, right? So there are 5 parents in this group.
Yeah, we haven't counted kids on the other eras. I feel like there are a lot of kids on probably era 1 too.
Probably.
All right, let's stay in the parents lane. Let's go to Amanda Garcia.
Yeah, I know you mentioned there are not a lot of physical liabilities, and it's not that Amanda's a physical liability in the sense that it's like dangerous for her to do things, but she's not a physical powerhouse. And if this season does skew more physical, Amanda could be very short-lived for this game. But she will make the most of her time as much as she can have it, especially with her best friend, Cara Maria, in the mix. I'm sure that will go very swimmingly.
And you know what? It's like, yes, Cara Maria, but also Michelle, also Tori, also like there are articles you can find if you want to catch up on this, the audience, not you, Brian. Like Ashley's Reality Roundup has an article that covers like this Instagram fight between Tori and Amanda that almost led to legal action and claims of libel. Like, it's just bananas. Like, there's really no person Amanda won't fight.
No, she won't. And she's also like, she's not
actually a man. It's usually women. I will call her after that.
That's fair. She also has had some bad luck in terms of eliminations, in terms of who she has had to go against. Like it probably won't get that much better given the group of women this season, but she doesn't really find herself going against like the other Amanda-ish types. So she's going against like a Cara or a Tori or things like that, where she really stands no chance. And she also gets, when she goes against them, like super physical things, like a balls in against Tori. Like, she's not catching a lot of breaks in terms of what is happening in her elimination. So she needs a little bit of luck to find herself, even halfway through to this game.
Yeah, it's a good point. Although I think we've talked about it before that, there really aren't like Amanda-ish types where people, and I don't think like we really dog Amanda's like physicality. I think
she's not horrible. Yeah.
But her own teams and partners, like she was when it was like the Bejeweled season, I forget which one that was. Was that Spies, Lies, and Allies? And they just like kept trying to get her off the team. And it was like, I don't really think Amanda seems that bad, but what she lacks in natural athletic ability, she makes up for in being willing to throw challenges for spite. So that also is a double liability, like of even if she were good. She's willing to go home for spite, which I really respect, but makes a tough team member if this indeed is a team challenge.
Yeah, I could see her and not exactly the most camaraderie building Jordan having some altercations in a daily or two if things aren't going their way. So that could be one to watch.
But like, wouldn't it be amazing? And like, I know Jonna is pretty connected, but even on All Stars, like Jonna had like MJ and Janae had good social games, but but like on her most recent season that she was like going into eliminations quite frequently, as opposed to on the first two where she was like pretty steady. Or there was one season where she definitely was like getting called out and less in the social vibe of the house. So like, is there an interesting kind of group that could form between Nia and Amanda and Jonna and Averey that like Tori kind of doesn't fit into? Of like, I could really see like Nia and Amanda and Jonna and Averey kind of gelling.
Sure. And then it just, it'll come down to, again, like, how does the voting structure go? Are the other teams voting? Because if that's the case, then, why would they go after Amanda? That doesn't seem to make much sense. Is it an intra-team vote? And, like, can the men sway the decisions too? Then I'm sure if that case, someone like Tori can be swayed. So I think a lot of that will have to be decided how the voting structure kind of goes down.
And one thing about Amanda that I really do respect, I think she can make it hard when it comes to like her really personal like attacks. But one thing I respect is like when she rides for someone, she absolutely rides for them. Right. And like, I think it gets framed with like the Casey, Tori, and Nisa like friendship clique of like, look how loyal they are. But Amanda really did have strong loyalties to people who either no longer are asked to return or no longer return. And she's like, I do think Amanda in her bones, like, plays a loyal game. She just hasn't found like new people to really be loyal to. And there are a few on Era 4 we'll talk about, but I'm actually just convinced myself that I'm very interested in seeing like where Amanda socially goes this game.
She's an entrepreneur too. Don't put that past her. I love that in her hometown, she came up with seemingly a very smart idea for helping to prevent drowning kids in baths. So that seemed to be a big winner. So rooting for that.
Yes. So let's go to Tori, her arch nemesis on this, at least on this Era team.
Yeah. So Tori, obviously, right up there with the Laurel and the Cars of the world of top female competitor. Coming off, she's like in her standing, the defending female champion, actually in any standing challenge, probably the last woman to win the show, with Emmanuel being the solo champ of 39. So she's coming off that. Has her crew, obviously Devin, Anissa, top of the pack there, but obviously has her largest batch of haters, I would say, in the mix, especially led by Cara. So we're going to see Tori, I think, in a position where we haven't really seen her, at least challenge proper wise, in quite some time. That is not the center of a lot of things and having to try to fight her way out of it, and could be the person like back in her day of when she first started, tossed into a lot of eliminations like you alluded to.
Yeah, Tori is always an interesting one. I mean, I think like before Ride or Dies, I feel like Jordan would be her number one. And now, much to the chagrin of the audience, because when they work together, it's quite annoying. But I think like Devin might be her number one now, like even surpassing Jordan. And if it is sort of team votes or if it even goes to individual or whatever, and Tori's going to make a decision between Devin or Jordan, that could be pretty interesting. So I think there's some interesting dynamics there. But yeah, certainly with 40 people, she's not as insulated as she, often is when more than half the house are in her, clique. Yeah. It is also fascinating to me that Tori's only done one or two more seasons, if you count even World Championship and USA, than Amanda. When I just feel like Tori, there hasn't been a season without Tori in like 100 years. It's just like not accurate, but it is my perception.
Yeah, but even to like the earlier point, it is weird that like Tori represents an era, but it just doesn't feel like the era that Leroy represents. Like it does feel like Tori should just be on the next era, but I guess by the semantics of this breakdown, like she has to be here, but she feels more like the face of the new era, not like this Rivals Battle of the X's era that this seasons have been.
So that's fascinating because you're objectively right, because she comes in season 30, so she's right at the end of this era. But I think maybe because when she like started, she almost immediately like came in under the veterans' wing. She starts this relationship with Jordan. She does a season or two like when they're fighting with Salami or whatever, and it's like, she becomes less likable because of Jordan and is constantly apologizing for him. Then they break up, and then they're having breakup seasons where they're working together again. And she's almost so entrenched with Jordan and sort of those older veterans. And I think her impact far like exceeded when she started in the challenge. Even when I'm saying like, I feel like she's been on way more seasons than she even has.
Right.
Because I think some of the new crop in era 4 comes in. And yes, they have reverence for Cara and Laurel. But I think a lot of them are like, I'm the new Tori.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm Cam and Tori's threatened by me. Or like, you know, people will say like, oh, she's threatened by Nerys, not because they're hook up with Jordan, but because Nerys is going to be the new Tori. Like she's already in the conversation of who the new era 4 girls are going to replace. So shout out really to Tori for only having one win and already becoming sort of like the definitive champ, I guess, even before she won of like the franchise.
100%. And that's a little bit, I think, a lot of the resentment, not just of the cast, but of people watching, is like, she's the face of the show, but has never won. At least now she has her win, but it's still only just one win. But then again, Laurel had only won once also, and you know, kind of say the same things about her.
Let's go to who I think is Tori's number one, Devin, ride or die. I was going to say defending male champ, but that's not true.
Yeah, I think of all the people coming in, I think things went so perfectly for Devin in Ride or Dies, obviously. Winning with Tori, things really broke his way. 10 out of 10. Things could go very poorly, I feel like, for Devin. I think Devin, you know, he's obviously got himself in much better shape physically than he was when he first started. Like, he couldn't have done the things he did in Ride or Dies when he first broke onto the show, like 100%. But I think he does a lot of it for shtick, but he also presents himself as a bigger threat than he is physically. Like, he's as opposed to Amanda, who's gotten very unlucky with her eliminations, matchups, and competitions. Devin has gotten very lucky in terms of his eliminations and competitions. Like against Bananas, there was like the puzzly lights thing. Like he has gotten a lot of those. And if he gets, you know, the wrong thing against a Leroy or a Derek or a Mark or you go Brat, like you go down the line, like he's getting smoked by those people. Like he needs a little bit of luck, and I can see it going poorly quickly. Like Devin, he can go very far. He could make the final again, but he could also be like one of the first people out of the show. And I don't think a lot of people have as much variance to their game as Devin.
Yeah, and it's, you know, I flagged it about, you know, Darrell in an All-Stars win when, you know, people talk about that like last All-Stars final, like really him and Janelle won or whatever. In Ride or Dies, I think you could make the case, right? If Bananas and Nany don't F up the way they put in that cement block, Devin's not a champion and his star is a little duller, but he is. So like, you know, it happened, he won, but to your point, everything went like exactly the right way it needed to go for him to get that win. And so I do think he's coming in with a lot to prove in this kind of grouping for how highly he holds himself, for Tori being on the official challenge podcast. Like Devin's one of the definitively best men to be on the show. I think it's like a little soon to say that. And if you're going to have that bravado, and we love it, and like that's part of his character and his like heelness, but then you're going to get tested. And now like we'll see, he's going to get tested by some of the best to do it. That said, socially, not only did Devin revive his like or reform his like physical prowess and really up his physical game just in the last 2 seasons, Devin really turned his social game from being like the thorn in everyone's side to actually getting along with Bananas, getting along. You know, Tori obviously did a lot for that. I think the last 2 seasons he's been on, while he's still a thorn in people's side, he's got a really much broader social circle and social game, which definitely helped him on his last season. And I don't know if this is a spoiler. I'm going to be irritated, but I guess they could have met on their trip just as much as they could have met in the house. But he's very publicly dating Michelle. And I feel like that had to have at least originated here. And that's very interesting to me for both of them, of where they're like, what's that going to look like socially in the house?
Yeah, it's a very fair point. It's hard to understand like the approach for that. I mean, because like they could have just been the first 2 out and they just like went on a trip together after, or they could have made the final together. I don't know.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like
it's hard to know.
Way.
Yeah, it could be either one.
All right.
It could be nothing, and it's like Ace and Averey, and they're like, you know, or you know,
Ace and Averey.
Adam and Averey, but I guess we can go right to Averey.
Yeah, let's go to Averey. This is one where I should let you go first, but I won't. Originally from Real World Portland, one of the older sort of the old guard really in on this team. Not that she's old, she's 33. I will say, and I like Averey, and I was happy to see her rejoin the All Stars franchise. This is the one pick that's sort of a miss for me of this era.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely fair. Like, obviously, I love Averey. Happy to see her on All Stars. That feels like the right spot. Or if she had made an appearance on 39, if they were doing that, that would have felt like the right spot. Like, she is kind of the Aviv of this group. It's like it's great that she's here. It could be fun. She could do well. Who knows? But there's other people that should, could, and would be better fit for season 40 of the show. When the interesting part with Averey was like the I think season 40's cast was leaked before All Stars Forward aired, knowing Averey was going to be on it. So I think a lot of people in their minds were like, "Oh my God, Averey, whether she wins or makes the final, like she must make a huge name for herself on All Stars Forward." They brought her back for that, and there here she is on season 40, and like she was, you know, fine on All Stars. Like she wasn't really much of an impact player at all. So I think a lot of people came out of that being like, all right, she came back for All Stars 4, but like there was no big splash. So it's like, why was she cast for this era? And I think, I think when we get to the list of people that were like cut or not cut, but like not included, I think there's a couple of big names that would have been on this show if, their personalities and what they've done in the past would have allowed them to be. But even still, I think there's some other names that would have been more suited for this era.
Yeah, and just for people who might not be as familiar with Averey, it's because she appeared on Battle of the Exes 2 in 2015. Definitely one of the people who was in one of the more notable or memorable relationships. You don't see her ex here, which, I mean, at this point, it's like 10 years old, so it'd be tired. Right. But like, that was like a no-brainer, honestly, to bring them on, Johnny and Averey, to an Exes season. And then she appears on Rivals 3 with Leroy, which is interesting, that they're on the same team now. And then that's it. And then All Stars 4. So a Jody-like run of just like a few normal person seasons, then back to your life. But what's interesting, and I'm only thinking of this now, like, because to me, like Averey with you is like me with Ryan. Like, I understand why people aren't thrilled to see him and don't think there's going to be much. But like, I love Ryan, so I'm always happy to see him on.
Yeah.
There aren't a ton of people, and we would have seen them in really eras 1 and 2, who really came out who haven't been on All Stars or even seasons of Challenge Proper recently that are big gets. Like when we were talking about Leroy, and I'm like, well, maybe bringing him out of retirement feels like a big get. We don't have Wes. How do we not have Leroy? But like, even Nehemiah comes to mind, but he was on All Stars. Like, it would have been cool if there were just a couple of like Landons or Corals, like people they could not get for All Stars that they somehow figured out a way to get into buy into 40. And maybe they didn't want that. Like maybe they wanted to see what these people look like in a challenge environment before they throw them back in. But I do think if I look at like the early 2.5 eras, that is kind of missing, where like it'd be cool if we didn't see Averey on All Stars, she'd be that person, right? Like, oh my God, I never thought we'd see her again, and here she is, and that could be cool.
Yeah, it is interesting also. I don't know how much this will play into it, but like to have 30% of the team is Real World Portland. I don't know how close to Jordan, Nia, Averey. Obviously, Averey and Nia had their huge falling out, but I think they're pretty good. But it is interesting to note, like for this one team, I don't think that's really the case for other eras. Like it's all from an OG Real World season.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. So let's go to them. Let's go to the rest of the members of Real World Portland. And I did a lot of digging on what happened with Nia and Jordan. And you know what happened? We watched what happened. It's one of the rare like confrontations in challenge history that actually made air. But I never like read the articles about it before or like caught up with the Instagram live they did. So I don't know how much depth we want to go in, but I went down a rabbit hole. But anyway, let's start with Nia.
Nia, obviously she's had a moment of either being I think as the moment you're kind of discussing, either like banned or pseudo banned from the show at certain points. She was gone for a hot second. Also made her reappearance in All Stars 3 or 2. How she made her reappearance. I don't think she's been on a challenge. When was her last proper season.
Yeah, when she was disqualified from Battle of the X's 2 with Leroy for groping inappropriate conduct, let's say, with Jordan, both verbal and physical.
Yeah, so obviously it's been a hot second for her on Challenge proper, but Nia is a very physically strong woman. Like, I think a lot of people not like forget that, but like she is right up there in terms of like size as someone like Laurel. Like, she's like very intimidating if you catch her one-on-one in elimination. So she's going to have that going for her, but she kind of lost herself in All-Stars when Jordan went home. Like, I think it's going to be interesting to see how she does getting back into the challenge world. I think her mental health and mental sanity is going to be like the crucial X factor for her in terms of how she does. Because if she has that on right, like, she's like a dark horse pick to win the whole thing. If she kind of puts it all together, that she has that at least level of physicality upside.
Yeah, and I don't really remember, honestly, from World Championship where her relationship with Tori and Jordan fit into everything. I mean, I think when we first saw Nia and Jordan again, they kind of came in as a pair, which I think facilitated both of their returns, probably because, Jordan, while he denies that he was ever banned, Jordan fell in the D era, where D was a contestant who was definitely banned during like the BLM movement, and that had people like up in arms, rightfully so, about Jordan's past conduct from his real world season with Nia, against Nia, I should say, and racial comments and slurs he used against her. And so then we didn't see Jordan for a while, and he maintains that he wasn't banned, and Nia hasn't said he was banned, but they were reintroduced together, right? Or they were reintroduced together and did a Facebook Live together about it and have talked about it. And you can find that. And Nia and Jordan maintain that they're in a good place. And there was also sort of a romantic aspect when they first like reintroduced themselves onto the scene, which feels to like really not be present. I don't think it was really present on the show and is present now. But in terms of the dynamic between them and Tori, like I'll need my memory refreshed on this season of like where they all stand.
Yeah, I hope they give a nice recap flashback on talking head of a couple of them and be like, "Ooh, where do we stand with each other? Oh, I hate Tori. Oh, I love Nia." I don't know. We can use that.
So it's really interesting because in that Variety article, when they were interviewing the executive producer of All Stars 3, they also asked her about bringing Nia and Jordan back. And she did not answer the question. Like, they were like, the question was, Jordan and Nia are part of the season after a tumultuous past, which included a racial controversy. What was the conversation around deciding to bring them back? We see the Real World Homecoming cast really opening up about those past events. Will that happen on All Stars too? And she said, I think their situation is pretty unique because they have had a friendship for a really long time, but the audience has never really seen that. They had never really seen the piece that they had made. What we sort of realized is that they were actually quite close. So certainly we acknowledge it in the show, but for the most part, we don't do that. We don't do the deep dive in the series that we would in the real world. We don't usually unpack a lot of the past that doesn't relate to the challenge. Tough to say that this doesn't relate to the challenge. So we'll see if that's still sort of the philosophy that carries over into season 40 with them. That said, it's like, again, I'm glad I don't make these decisions, right? Like, it's with CT, it's with Nia and Jordan. Like, where is sort of growth allowed outside of the show, on the show? It's certainly a big topic. We have a couple of those people between CT and Emily, who we talked about, and Jordan and Nia, and where the lines are. And we'll talk about, as you said, some of the people who are clearly not invited back also in this era. This is definitely maybe like the controversial era, like the reckoning era, where some of these people did really get banned justifiably, and some of these people are back on the show, justified or not. It's a weird era, a gray era.
Yeah, this is where they at least started to implement some sort of policy. Really trickled more, certainly in the later 30s, about when things really were more implemented. But at least the people who got those policies more debuted in this era. So this was like, the Stone Cold Steve Austin bad club.
All right, let's talk about Jordan, who's the other half of this. I have in my notes that Jordan is 24. That must be 34 or incorrect. Jordan is a youthful child, but did start on season 24 in Rivals. You remember his rival in Rivals 2?
Oh, the great Marlon. It's insane that
Yep.
he's only had one appearance. Insane.
Can't forget it. Didn't he come on All Stars?
I think he was rumored to be on one, but I don't
No,
think
I
he appeared.
swear we talked about him. Wow, I should have anticipated this. I included him on the chart. Come on. Big money, big money. No, Mandela effect. My bad. I feel like we've talked about him. Anyway.
Yeah. No, but it's insane that he hasn't been back because he had like one of the great seasons. He had a great. I think there was one episode where he hooked up with both Derek and Nani in the same episode. So like, get Marlon back in the mix. We need it.
Slay. So yeah, as I said, Jordan denies that there was a ban. He said there's never been a suspension. At the time, Tori wanted to get a few more shows in before having kids. So we discussed we'd go back together, blah, blah, blah. Okay. One thing that's been swirling around Jordan, unless you're a totally new viewer to the challenge, you probably know Jordan. Jordan's one of the most iconic people of the challenge, both probably because of his controversy, like almost like a CT, like, and he still is tough to root for in terms of his personality, but due to his just sheer athleticism, especially in the face of his disability, but just in general, like he is just one of the most all-around incredible athletes in the franchise's history. So he's just a really dynamic, complicated person. Have you seen this recent People article swirling around about Jordan talking about the treatment on this season?
Yes, I have seen it circling the webs, so to speak.
So, like, I don't know what this means. Like, normally, and we'll talk about what he said. Like, normally I'd be like, wow, brave for like a reality TV contestant to speak out against production. I would normally say this means you're totally done with the show. But with like a Jordan, I think there's a certain level of like celebrity on the challenge that's like, I can say whatever. Like,
right.
I could speak truth to power here. Like, I can make change. What are you going to do? Not invite me back? I'm Jordan.
Right.
So I don't know, but yeah, basically he went on Instagram on July 14th and said it's, quote, the worst treatment we've ever received as a cast. When I say a challenge house is one of the worst environments to be in, I'm not exaggerating. This one was by far the worst treatment we've ever received as a cast, and it's taken its toll. So you could go to his Instagram to get more information about this, but it's a shame. So here's another quote. The entire time you're in there, you're losing shape. We are treated like shit. We sleep like shit. We are fed like shit. Our schedules are dog shit. 20-hour days like nothing. So in true Jordan fashion, he's like complaining about how it didn't help him stay in shape more than it is like the general treatment. But I don't know what to really do with that.
I don't know. And it's just, it would be so classic challenge of like, I think one of the things that we always talk about that is so great about All Stars, it is the lightness of it. Like they're in nice places. It's a nice house. It looks like a fun time. And it felt like the challenge proper was starting to get away from like the bunker of it all. And it feels like we're going back to that. And this feels like a really bad season to like go back to that for. Yeah,
I believe Jordan, but I hope somehow it's not true. Like that's a real bummer. It's like when we were watching the CBS version and like Tyson, everyone came off and was like, that was horrible. That was unfair. It's bad conditions. Like, yeah, it's not what you want to hear from people who are doing entertainment at the end of the day for you.
Right.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see with that in mind. It's also like pretty ambitious to have 40 people on a show, and maybe it was too ambitious. I don't, they could cut 20 people in the first day. I'd be surprised, but they could. But otherwise, it's a lot of people for a reality show.
I mean, it does seem like they're cutting some people the first day based off.
But half?
Well, not half.
That's what like because even 20 is a big season for a reality show, So 40 is pretty astronomical.
It is. It is. So it is also astronomical without Fessy in the mix. Jordan's the one who has had quite the roster of women that he has had some relationships with on this season. Some of which on his own team, obviously.
A couple of which on his own team, yep. And we'll talk about Nerys. But All right, who's missing? You mentioned Fessel, so I went right to the slideshow. Thanks again to Stuart for preparing this. I don't know what we would be doing without this.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how we don't have Anastasia Miller on this season. I feel like that's the big miss. No, I mean, I think obviously if you're looking at like the Averey spot, I mean, Millionaire Mitchell is the one that obviously jumps right off the page of like she really represents this era, and obviously for some of her past actions, she either must be banned, and the fact that she's not getting the call for 40 would, for me, imply it's banned for good, because otherwise I feel like they would have lifted the ban for this season. So no Millionaire Mitchell. Obviously, Nani is the other big name that I'm sure said no. I couldn't imagine her not being asked. So I'm sure like her and Casey had a conversation about how they wanted to go about it. So I'm sure she said no. But I guess the person that I get what could have been asked and said no, or that wasn't asked that maybe could have been in the mix, I would say would be Jenna. I feel like Jenna, she is in that similar spot of like the new real world type season. She was the ex in Corey's season. They just brought Jay back for All-Stars. It would be kind of fun to see Jenna back in the mix. I don't know if her connection to Zach has some sort of ban to her, but I feel like she much more represents like this era than, even someone like Averey.
Yeah, and Caitlin Glancy expecting the Ashley response at least says theoretically whose spots would Ashley and Nelson take if they were available? So making it extra dirty. I think, yeah, Avery's the person who's got to come down in favor of any of those women. I agree. Nani feels like a big miss. Even like a Kayla or a Devin to me, I'd be more interested in seeing a return from than Averey in this arena. I'd like to see Averey get on All Stars. And then obviously Nelson, I don't really know if we'd ever see him again, both for physical and situational reasons. But I actually think the men make a lot of sense here. Like even if Nelson were eligible, if he were there, I'd be like, okay, if they did a 1-for-1 sub of like Corey, like from that grouping. But I think it's probably a really good blend. Yeah. But I think like the reason I think it works as it is like Leroy and Jordan are some of the twoest big names in the history of the challenge. Tony is kind of that person that isn't overexposed. People were ready to see him again, and we got kind of shortchanged on All Stars. And then Devin and Corey more representing sort of like the two sides of like the new era or the era 3 kind of young buck men, not young buck, but you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So I think it actually is a good blend, and you'd have to kind of like replace Corey with Nelson because I wouldn't want to get rid of any of the guys. And I like Corey, so I'm fine with that. I think Frank also is someone who comes up all the time as people wanting to see on an All-Stars. He would have been someone in that Landon camp of like, wow, we haven't seen him. We've been begging for him. That would feel really like special for 40.
I also think Sylvia. I think Sylvia would have been a lot of fun. I used to not be like the biggest Sylvia fan, but I feel like she's really come along, especially her last. I think it was an All-Star season. Her last appearance was very strong. I feel like she, again, even in that Averey spot, I feel like kind of fits a little bit better there.
All right, let's go on to the name segment because I didn't realize that this had been an hour already. Time flies when you're talking about controversy. So just to recap, Era 1, you picked OGs. Era 2, you picked angsty teens. I went with meat. I'm so dumb. Okay. Here's some suggestions from the crowd. Mike Bloom says, top contributor Mike Bloom. Since the trailer said this era brought in rivals and exes, given the era's theming, how about Bad Blood? Christine Tripati said, with all the troublemakers in there, the name for this group is Potsters for sure. Amanda Bankin said, Team Real World Millennial. Jacob Brabant said Team Jory because this era unfortunately runs through those two again. Cindy Bolin said Team Lovers and Haters. I think everyone in the squad has had challenge romances, exes, and infighting within the group, and that this part has been a major part of their storyline. Cameron Roller said my personal name for this era will be Foes, Hoes, and Woes. I would say just Team Drama. I think we were all in the same mindset, honestly. I don't know if you should really have to submit your own suggestion, but I guess you get to just pick the best from the listeners.
It's a great setup for me. I can't go wrong. I get the answers filtered in, and I do love Mike Bloom's Bad Blood. I feel like the concept, the fact that rivals and exes were such a big part of this era. At least 2 versions of each. One was, maybe even 3 of Rivals 3 if that was in this era. So yeah, I think Bad Blood fits this group, and also as we talked about in the top, fits the photo very well. They all look like they hate each other. So Bad Blood.
All right, no Bad Blood here. Closing out era 3.
Also amazing that it hasn't been the name of a challenge season yet. I'm sure that will be like for 43 or something, but coming at you. All right, that is era 3. You can subscribe. Rob's website.
Should they all be like? Should OGs be Reputation, and should season 2 be 1989, or what was like the most teeny like? We'll think on it. Get back to us in era 4.
I like that. That's fun.
I'm not even so. Are we like Swiftie? I'm not a Swiftie. Don't like burn my house down. But
yeah, I am a Swiftie for the Swifties. I love how much they love Taylor Swift and how much they get behind all the Easter eggs and stuff. Like, I wish I was into it as much as they were. It just seems like a fun thing. And I hate people that love things. Like, let them love things. Who cares? Loving things and getting into it is fun. Yeah, don't yuck the yum. Yeah.
I agree. I think I said that on New Girl Old Guy once, where I was just like, I love the hoopla of the Travis Kelce and the Swift and the like all of that. It's like, yeah.
Yeah. Let them live. And you can live.
Let them live. Brian Cohen.
Subscribing, Rob, as website.com/challenge feed. Follow me on Twitter, Cohen_, TikTok, challenge wrap-ups. I can follow you.
Yeah, you missed your window, but you can't follow me, but you can find me in the Facebook group. Or I love this. We got a great 5-star review. So if you want to give us a 5-star review, somebody, I'll read it really quick. I was going to wait till Era's 4 to catch up, but I'm plugging it now because it's in my head. We got an excellent 5-star review from NovaCam_, about the podcast. This is incredible, actually. I've just binge/rewatched all seasons, including the entirety of this podcast, over the span of 6 months. So at this moment, I could actually pick Ali and Brian out of a lineup by their voice. LOL has happened. A great show. I always agree with at least one of them. We'll take it. I love their love of the show. Contestants and TJ. 5 stars all day. Don't need another challenge pod. P.S. Ali, accept my Twitter follow request. LOL. So if you would like to follow me on Twitter, you can specifically shout it out in a 5-star review. But no, we appreciate the love and support as we get started in the season. So you can, I don't know, go to whatever podcatcher and review. I look at Apple Podcasts because I'm too old and confused to look at anything else.
There you go. And that is it for era 3. We will be back for era 4 and to close out our Challenge 40 previews. Until then, have a good one.